Exploring the unknown, from conspiracies to mysteries, you are entering the conspiracy sector. Well, welcome everyone to this very special program. I'm Aubrey Batchelor, my co-host is Chris Jacobs, and you are entering the conspiracy sector. Tonight, we have a very, very special holiday program. For the inaugural episode, we are going to dive deep into Halloween lore. We are going to explore lycanthropy, which is one becoming a werewolf. So, 'tis the season of terror times. We are going to fly high on information, and we are going to learn some very scary things surrounding this creature.
All right. Yeah, this is a very special topic for everyone, folks. He's going to kick it off by talking about some very spooky and interesting stories, and I'll end it off with a lot of my research and a lot of what I've seen in my psychic field. So take it away, Aubrey.
Perfect. I have an amazing story here, which is very grounding when it comes to werewolf lore. Uh, in a way, kind of what I've come to find out, a lot of legends that started with werewolves and lycanthropy, it kind of all originates back to this one man named Peter Stump. A very, 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 very interesting fellow, if I might add. I'm going to see if I can't turn the camera around here so you can take a look. Never mind, that won't work. Anyhow, Peter Stump was a very, very, very weird individual. He's known to be the werewolf of Bedburg, is the original lore story.
Don't see you anymore, Aubrey. I don't see you at all. I just see your background.
This. How about now?
There we go. Good.
Technical problems abound. Anyhow, Peter Stump was a very, very weird and odd fellow. He's known as the werewolf of Bedburg. And the original lore surrounding this particular guy, it basically, you can sum it up with, was he a werewolf? Was he just a deranged mental patient suffering from clinical lycanthropy? or was he just a psychotic bloodlust serial killer? You know, the theories of the original lore abound, you know, with this man. However, I'm going to share a little story from soulask.com. Peter Stump murdered 14 children and 2 pregnant women. He was arrested while preparing to commit another horrific crime. While trying to bite a little girl, while the latter had her neck protected by a piece of metal, Stump broke his teeth, and the villagers caught him a little while later while he was trying to flee into the forest. Legend has it that he still has his animal form shortly before his capture. However, in 1589, Stump had one of the most sinister and most famous werewolf judgments in history. After being quartered, he admitted to practicing black magic when he was 12. He claimed that the devil had given him a magic pelt which allowed him to transform by taking the appearance of a greedy, very voracious, and powerful wolf, with big and wide eyes, which shimmered like the fire at night, a large and wide mouth, with sharp teeth, a huge body, and powerful legs. The elimination of his belt, as he says, prompted him to return to his human form. For 25 years, Stump had claimed to be an insatiable blood drinker who satiated himself on the flesh of goats, lambs, sheep, as well as those of men, women, children. He basically just tortured people, cannibalized them, and drank their blood. And he was accused for being a periodic murderer and a cannibal, but also of having an incestuous relationship with his daughter, who was also sentenced to death with him, by the way. And we're going to get to that gruesome gore story. That is Halloweenish ending as it gets. But he was finally ran down after several years of getting away with these horrendous crimes. They finally managed to capture him up, and he finally admitted to all of it. And it the gruesomeness of it for the original lore story is just abound, because just do some research into it, everybody, and you're going to be absolutely amazed. But his ending came. They gathered him up. They put him on a torture wheel. They extended his limbs. They took hot iron piercing rods. They seared the flesh off of his shoulders. Once the flesh was gone, they took clubs and they broke the bones. Then they decapitated and burned his body. And after burning his body and ritualizing his ashes, they took his head and they put a wolf pelt on it and hung it, strung it up high above the lands. Why? The power of the church, the power of the message. This is what happens if you're going to do this. So with a gruesome, horrendous story, it has this ending that's as gruesome as his actual acts. That's what's kind of weird about it, and kind of karma just kind of catching up with that odd fellow or possible werewolf. These are kind of all original lore legends, of the actual genesis of it, I guess, of the werewolf story. And that's just one of them. But I want to also combine that with the werewolf witch chop twat. But sometimes it's difficult to pronounce words. These are the werewolf witch trials. I want people to try to say that 5 times fast. Werewolf witch trials. Werewolf witch trials. Werewolf wibwa. Anyhow, we've all heard of the famous witch trials. Werewolves were tried right next to these witches. And some of those trials were about as gruesome as they could come, too. This is actually from Gutenberg.org. It's the werewolf witch trials, which were trials combined with werewolf trials. Belief in werewolves developed parallel to the belief in witches in the course of the late Middle Ages and the early modern period. Like the witchcraft trials as a whole, the trial of supposed werewolves emerges in what is now Switzerland in the early 15th century and spreads throughout Europe in the 16th and peaking in the 17th and subsiding in the 18th century. So you see the kind of rise and fall of lycanthropy and witchcraft as a whole. They interweave, they intermix, and this is what's glorious. These lore and original stories, can lead up to amazing ideas for movies. We've all seen these werewolf themed and creature themed movies that are just so amazing when you understand and kind of can, I guess, hone in on the original story and combine it with that. It's just kind of amazing to see what ideas come up throughout Hollywood to combine it with this original lore. And it blows my mind away, because Peter Stump's mentioned in here again, and I can't believe it. Nobody has made a movie out of that. I think that we need to get together. We need to combine the werewolf and witch trials with Peter Stump and do an original transformation movie, and we might become millionaires, because Hollywood is running out of ideas and COVID-19 has shut everything down. So we need to explore that and bring creatures back into the main screen, baby.
Creatures have never stopped being popular. That would make a good horror movie. That particular script, yeah.
And the last good, somewhat decent werewolf movie that I can remember was the one with Benicio del Toro when he redid The Wolfman with Anthony Hopkins.
That was a great movie. Yeah, that was a great movie. And as a kid, I watched the Werewolf series back in the 80s. Yeah, and that was Chuck Connors and them. That was actually pretty cool the way they that series too.
That's like original feng shui kind of. There's those creatures, in like 50s sci-fi. Then you get into like the 60s, 70s, more 70s and 80s, and then it gets to be kind of that weird stop animation feng shui type. And it just takes on takes on its whole new kind of atmosphere, and it's just kind of like horror gravity, I guess. But to finish this up, there's a lot of interesting topics, and Chris and I, there's so much stuff that rolls on in our heads. We tend to get excited and overwhelmed, and we tend to talk a lot because we run out of time. There's too much to talk about in this amazing world. There's so much you can learn. You can't learn everything that's out there. And werewolves is just one topic out of everything that's out there that you could ever think of and combine of. Every creature, every animal, every planet, every type of chemical, everything that's out there. If you think about all the information that's out there, it's quite amazing. This is just one tiny topic we're
And
talking
we're going to try to deliver a lot of those different topics to you on future episodes of the Conspiracy Sector. We try to dissect some of these different topics to the best of our ability to do so with our respective research and talents and everything. And we'll see how far we get with 1/10 of some of the information that's out there.
Indeed, indeed. As with anything, just time and dedication and mental intuity to hone in on that particular subject to enhance your knowledge, to just connect all the dots, if you will, and combine it with other information, is just the amazing thing about that. And to combine that with the Halloween season, that brings up, everything horror kind of, the little trick or treats and everything that goes bump in the night that you want to just feel that skin crawl all over your body because for some odd reason we like being creeped out as human beings. It's an odd fascination, but we tend to get off on it in a way. Creepiness and mystery and all that just thrills us,
And the paranormal, all of it combined together. Yeah.
Yes, it's truly, truly, genuinely amazing when you combine all of that, and then not just like the made up things in Hollywood, but all the genuine accounts of different paranormal activity that bombard our world on a daily basis. It's just amazing. That goes right back into these werewolf trials. I swear that should be a new phrase that people need to try to say quick because
hashtag
it is coming out, baby.
Yeah.
But to combine that back to the werewolf, that's a very ravenous beast that just creates this genuine terror. We all know what it would be like. There's some of us have been, but we all can imagine what it would be like to be chased down and attacked by a bear. We'll just think of a paranormal creature that has a ravenous bloodlust that's running at you. I think I'm going to sprint the fastest that I've ever sprinted before in my entire life.
Well, I've heard of encounters with dark dogmen before where people have tried to outrun them and all that. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I knew that. See, this is where I'd said earlier, this is what I'm talking about. You brought up Dogman. Dogman you can compare to the werewolf. Also with skinwalkers, they're kind of all similar. You can consider them like creature cousins, I guess.
Creature cousins. All of them, yeah.
And the Dogman is a very, very amazing topic because there's so many reports that not everything can be made up. There has to be some genuine reports. Of course, there's people out there that want attention and they want to create a story and they just want attention and want to create a good story. I guess that's all I can say. But there has to be genuine reports. There's too much strange activity when it comes to Dogman sightings. I actually consider Dogman in a way more credible than werewolves, just because of the tremendous amounts of reports. And I know that theories abound. A lot of people say that they're the same creature, or they're different creatures, or one and the same, or they're totally different. I guess that's a debate just like everything else in this world.
Yeah, I know that there's like descendant lineages of different dogmen, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but there's like different descendant lineages, different types of dogmen that were considered to be demonic in the past, like little short ones, for instance. Some people in the Puritan age drew like these demonic looking pictures thinking that they were demons, like without a head. But there are these shorter dogmen that have a head more without shoulders, or kind of like the face is further down in. And to somebody looking, they would think that was like a headless person walking away from them with a bunch of hair. So that entered into Puritan myth and lore too.
Amazing. And if you dive on into that Puritan lore, that's ancient information at its finest, and that's just one form of ancient information, that's out there from a certain belief in people and everything along that line. But it's weird, like when you can correlate creatures to that lore, when they talk about specific creatures that were going along that lore, the information they left for us, they kind of give you that feel that they were a part of everyday life in a way, like they were normal. It's not just Yeah, crazy.
Oh
You're
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, I found it very, very interesting. This is actually, I found things this morning that I found very fascinating. I'll see if I can share this screen here with the audience here and go to, no, not that one. All right. Yeah, this one was about Saint Christopher. Like you know the patron saint of travel.
Yeah.
And St. Christopher, I found this very, very interesting. He was reported to be of enormous size with the head of a dog instead of a man, apparently a characteristic of the Marmatea, that is actually an African word meaning dog man. And
Hmm.
this Byzantine depiction of St. Christopher as dog-headed resulted from, they believe, a misinterpretation of Latin term meaning Canis or Canaanite, like Canaan, like Samson was a Canaan,
Hmm.
Samson the like Nazarene or Canaanite, to read Canis, that is canine. Well,
Hmm.
what I came to find out is that Saint Christopher, as he got converted to a saint in Christianity. And this actually I found very fascinating. Did the werewolf legend start with St. Christopher? And so you see
Hmm.
him being depicted as a dog. And they every time you try to read an interpretation of read into this, they'll say that it was basically like an animalistic tendency that was being depicted, like ancient man being animalistic. This is the church's view of that. I'll just read a little bit into this. This one I found this fascinating. You'll be surprised to see how the patron of travelers was depicted in early icons.
Hmm.
Saint Christopher is well known as the patron saint of travelers, and modern depictions of the saint often show him carrying the Christ child over a river. This is certainly a far cry from early icons that clearly show the famous saint with the head of a dog. What's the deal? Many ancient cultures had a myth that featured a dog headed race of men.
Hmm.
This myth even continues today with the popular werewolf stories. The
Hmm.
ancient myth was oddly enough translated into early Christianity and was at first a central part of the story surrounding St. Christopher. Essentially, the idea was that men who lost their way and turned to a life of sin acted like animals, the church's depiction. Sin was always associated with the base animal desires of the flesh, and some stories went so far to say that some men literally became part animal. The Egyptians were already familiar with the depictions of the half jackal, half human god Anubis, and so it naturally translated into Christian icons. One story relates how St. Christopher was at first one of these dog headed men, and upon encountering the Christ child, regained his human appearance. It is primarily symbolic, showing how Christopher left his animal like ways and embraced the gospel. Early Christians, especially in Egypt, decided to depict Christopher with a dog head to reference this story of conversion. It is a fascinating story, but one image you probably won't find on St. Christopher medal or holy card. What actually happened was there have been descendant lineages and races of dogmen that actually have existed for millennia. There's different descendant lineages that you see that have entered in parts of Europe and parts of Africa. That's where that one word came from that I mentioned, parts of Africa.
Hmm.
Also the north into Greenland, Iceland, into the Scandinavian cultures. You have Fenris, the hound of basically the hound mentioned in Scandinavian myth and lore. And you also have over here in the United States, you have the Rougarou and Skinwalker and all the Dogman sightings. What happened was I noticed that all this, if you were to be able to graph this, the basically the encounters over the centuries, if you were to add up all the stories everywhere from every part of the globe, you'll see there's one central point in which everything spread from. And that
Hmm.
was where Atlantis was supposed to be, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. You see
Hmm.
the stories of some dogman creatures up in Hyperborea, which would have been part of Atlantis in the Scandinavian myth and lore. That's also the land of cryptids and giants and all of that. Then you have also, I did some channelings on a group of dogmen that exist in the top, what I call the top of the world. And that's the forest that it lines the top of the globe. That's where I was getting some channelings from. There is a group of part human, part dogmen that actually exist up there. And also the stories of, like in Romania, Transylvania, werewolves, vampires, all of that in that area. In the United States, you have the Rougarou. I found out there was a group of dogmen in the South in the swamps that were actually telepathically putting signals out that actually were deterring people from entering the swamp, creating almost like a haunting or some kind of demonic like nature to keep people out of their territory.
I wonder, like kind of like an enchantment. I wonder if like certain creatures are enchanting people to come, to lead them out, into their direction, into the creature's direction, just with this ominous presence, this energy, I just want, like, you can combine that with some of the missing 411 cases that David Paulides, researches and that's his whole life work, but it's great work because that is one of the biggest mysteries around, is these missing children. And could some creatures be taking these children? Like what you're saying,
Oh yeah. There are some different alien groups that have been taken, and I don't doubt that ravenous dogmen have been grabbing them too. There have been reports of cryptids actually stealing people. Some people that have actually survived or not gotten captured have reported some cryptids grabbing people. They like to blame the forest people or Sasquatch a lot for that. But I feel there are like different like servant races to some of these different aliens that are out there in government groups that actually will grab children. Sometimes military will pose as them too. When they're trying to steal people to take them for their experiments in bases and stuff like that. But there have been cryptids that have been like basically hardwired to do the bidding of some of these alien groups and places like that. And I know like with werewolves in particular and dogmen, that's essentially the same difference. Like I said, you have all these descendant lineages that have more of an animalistic look to them. And you have the alien groups too, going back to St. Christopher. That actually goes back to a culture of them that actually rooted here on Earth. I found out there is actually a group of alien dogmen called the Antiqua, and they actually were the Anubis tribe, more regal look, staff, weapon, all this other stuff. And they're known, and dogmen are actually known for guarding portals. And you think about this, St. Christopher is basically ushering people across a bridge. What also could that be? A portal, or like the Bifrost in the Scandinavian myth, or the Rainbow Bridge that carried people from one area to another, that had portals on either end of that. And the Antiqua, I found out when they came here, their DNA didn't mesh completely with our magnetic and energetic fields here. And some of their people kind of went feral. Their descendant lineages, some of them went feral, along with the different Orion presences that were here that were trying to oppress the population at the time as well. And then you have these descendant lineages that sprang from Atlantis and went into all the four corners. That's why you have dogman tales on all parts of the globe. They sprang from one centrist point, and that was Atlantis. And along with other races like giants and other races as well. But dogmen were more regal-like dogmen were part of that story. Along with Egypt, you have stories of Anubis and them over in Egypt. That was also part of Atlantis. That was the Egyptian, like pre-Osirian culture was linked to Atlantis as well. That's why you have those stories surrounding that central point, and they spread out from that point global from that point.
Interesting, very interesting.
Did you have any other stories you wanted to share, Aubrey?
Actually, perfect timing since we're on the Dogman kick. This one, well, first and foremost, do you remember hearing about that Montana werewolf, or that Montana wolf, that huge creature that was shot or ran over here a few years ago, but it looks like a weird werewolf creature? Do you remember seeing that?
I vaguely have heard from it, heard about it. You might want to explain that one, yeah.
I forget the true details of that one, but I know that Montana's had very interesting reports. But this report comes from El Paso, Texas, and it's a pretty good one. He goes, I wanted to share a story of an encounter me and a bunch of friends had back in 1968. To this day, I still think about it. Kind of hard to forget no matter how hard I've tried. Anything I say today must be understood as the words of someone only 11 years old, but I'll try to make myself as clear as I can. On a summer evening in 1968, an older cousin, a group of friends, and I decided to play baseball at a nearby baseball field. The field was about 4 to 5 blocks away from where I lived at 3621 Richmond Avenue, and the field was southeast from my house. Anyway, we all got together and we were playing. There wasn't enough of us to play team-to-team matchups, so we were rotating one pitcher, one fielder, and the catcher, while the rest batted. There's some train behind us making noise, but we tried our best to hear and play. One buddy hit a foul ball and it went over the fence towards the railroad tracks. By then, it was getting a little past dusk. Though the fields weren't too bad, there was a man standing close to where the ball rolled to a stop. My cousin ran towards the fence and yelled at the man to throw the ball back to us. He ignored my cousin, so I ran over and yelled as well. The rest of us guys came over and we started to cuss the guy out for ignoring us. None of us wanted to get near the guy, though. Something about the guy just seemed ominous. Then a group of guys started to throw rocks. That's when the crap hit the fan. The guy, he turned around. He looked at us. And the first instance that we could think of, they're just like, oh, crap. That's a werewolf. So they turned around, ran, followed in the rest of us. We ran as a group. Some of us were lucky, made it home first. Feeling, of course, I can't believe that they didn't trip their friends to get away from them. They go on to finish this account to spare time because I know we have other topics to get to. After they see this creature literally stalks their house. And it's a classic case of kids being chased by something. And then, basically their parents thinking they're crazy. But it also goes back to that creature. Does this creature just know how to target certain people and get away with, I guess, masking its presence to other people? That's kind of the mystique and mysterious thing about it. It just seems like certain creatures can target a few people and then like just repel their existence to others. They can just get away with crime in plain sight to some people while they're dragging somebody else away.
Oh, yeah. What happens is some people are more compatible with different energies than others. And I've noticed this with other creatures, like say the Draco. There's also spider-like creatures out there that target mainly children. There's, of course, like primate-like ones, not including the Sasquatch. There's some primate-like ones out there that can target, but it's a telepathic, instinctual, intuitive ability where they can just sense if the person is compatible or not. Like with werewolves specifically, aside from just the solid dog man that people see, like the classic werewolf ones, there are beings that can transform from a human-like form to a werewolf, like you see in the movie. And that is what it's referred to as like a transmutative, like almost like a virus, like how the vampires have to turn into the fangs and everything. But it's like that with werewolves, where they're tapping into this. And can moonlight enhance this? Yeah, there actually is an effect with moonlight that can actually enhance this. And what these beings can do, they can smell certain frequencies, and the ones that are like human transformative ones, there's not too many of them out there, from what I understand it. It's usually the dogman type that are actually the solid looking ones. Like you have like the Wauki in Florida, Seminole, then you go over to the Rougarou, you go further over, you have the Skinwalker tails up this way, up that side of the country. But with a werewolf specifically, the transformative one, they do have the ability telepathically to seek out prey, and they can actually smell people out to see if they're compatible for something they actually need, or they're kind of like vampires in a way.
You said it right there. I find that kind of interesting. How do you transmute that to another person? Like if the werewolf lore is true, that it's like a werewolf changes a person into a werewolf, it has to do that lycanthropy. It's the bacteria in their mouth, similar to like snake bite venom,
Yes, that's exactly
the bacteria gets in and it morphs them into a werewolf.
That's exactly how they do it. They actually will bite and transmit a viral contagion that's transmutative. It'll copy itself through the cells, and the moonlight and other energies can
Enhances it.
Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that out. Also, to get into an even creepier portion of this, our military has figured this out, and how to actually control some of the transformative capabilities, and they're able to combine werewolf DNA to their soldiers.
Mutant soldiers, anybody?
It's like type of super soldier, not just nano enhanced like some of them are, but that too,
yeah. We have to do an episode just on like what technology can become too. That's a horror story just in itself. We can start including technology into like Halloween, if you ask me, because the future, while technology is amazing, the future is kind of scary. What could it be? And maybe this is just series like Terminator, putting like fear into your eye. But there's a lot of prominent people in the world today. Elon Musk, I know, is one that warns of the advancement of AI. I believe Stephen King was another that warned, or Stephen King, who am I thinking of?
Stephen Hawking, yeah.
Stephen Hawking, there we go. He was another one that just believed that technology would maybe eliminate us someday, possibly. And that's scary in its own right, just thinking that maybe we might be the creators of all this, but yet what we create might capture us, essentially.
Exactly. And that's like that with werewolves too, because technology can actually enhance like a werewolf too. Like if they combine the DNA with technology, kind of like a cybernetic type of thing, you have basically the cocktail from hell right there. If you put it together. Yeah.
And really, a lot of this information might sound crazy to some people, but just think about this. This is kind of cool. Just take a look around you, and anything that isn't man-made, don't pay attention to. But anything in nature, obviously, don't pay attention to. Anything that's man-made, pay attention to. And anything that you see, whether it's a trash can, a computer, a pen, a vehicle, anything that was man-made was only in the imagination of man at one point. It came out of his imagination. It became to fruition, and it became realization. It became reality. Mm-hmm. So the mind and the sky and your imagination is the limit. It's amazing what technology we have out there, especially genetic manipulative technology, how we're able to combine certain species and intermix, and this werewolf technology to enhance certain creatures, or to enhance like a hybrid soldier, if you will, that's being that's going on. It is kind of scary.
It's creepy. They had preliminary tests in the beginning that didn't go quite right too, where they were trying to combine this werewolf genome, and I think they lost people in the process over that, but they managed to perfect it over a period of time and use it to create super soldiers that had the strength of basically a wolf, along with the nano enhancements. The wolf ones aren't as common as just the nano enhanced one, the super soldiers, but they do have werewolf soldiers out there that actually can transform and do their thing, that can actually hunt people with that scent that I was actually mentioning before.
Very interesting. There's I genuinely hope that I never come across a werewolf if they are out there, because it sounds about as scary as could be. But you remember that story that I shared with you about that Ryan and I had in Colorado? I think it was a Bigfoot encounter that we had, but who knows? Maybe it could have been, something else running through the bushes that is of unknown origin.
Oh yeah, people have mistaken one for the other. Like say the Wauki in Florida, for instance, that translates to swamp creature pretty much, and that's a dog man that lives in the swamp. But some people from the backside would swear that it was a Sasquatch. So if you're getting it from the backside, some of them are flat faced, see, and they tend to have just some canines that come up like this. if you weren't seeing it from the front, you'd swear, oh, it's Bigfoot. But there's been a lot of misidentification in there, where a lot of the sightings, some of the sightings that are out there are the misidentification of what race it actually is. There's a lot of hair-covered races out there. There's even bear squatches out there. There's, of course, Sasquatch. There's goat squatches out there. Ones that have like the satyr type look to them. There's those you can tell easily. They have horns, but they have those too. Yeah.
And I just want to pick up on that. I was just driving today on the way home and just taking a look around, when you're on your car ride, looking at everything as far as it goes. And really, townships, houses, land that people live on, most of us are, grouped together, really, the mass of the population is grouped together. There's so much wilderness in this tiny world, tiny large world, if you're comparing it to the whole scheme of things. Earth isn't that big, but to us, it's immense. And the fact that there's all that untamed wilderness, who knows what is out there, that might not even be, well, obviously there's many things out there that aren't known of yet because there's so much wilderness. So I see how, like, a lot of these incidences throughout time even, could not happen that often, just because, if they're a creature that is more animal than paranormal, it's going to be, they're going to want to live their own lives. However, there's too much paranormal aspect behind this being, which isn't normal, obviously, hence paranormal. But yeah, just amazing, isn't it?
What I found very interesting also, that early accounts, like say in India, for instance, there were accounts of people that lived in the mountains that they described as dogs. Some people thought, well, maybe these were just ugly people that people were just dog. But there were too many accounts of them barking and doing things of that nature. And the thing of it is, they were thought as such a common thing that the church felt compelled to try to convert them to Christianity. So there goes back to the St. Christopher story again, where Christ is actually turning him into a human, or blessing him and taking the animalistic portions away. They thought they were like an affront to Christianity. So obviously the church believed they were real, enough to go and try to convert them. And they saw them as people, so figured, okay, they wouldn't do this. So they figured that, oh, we'll just go and try to convert that tribe. They're just another tribe of people, like heathen tribe. They think. So yeah.
And I also want to compare all this to, like, we can go back to the witch and werewolf hunts as well, in combination with the church. They were fearful of these creatures. They were scared of these creatures. So they went after these creatures. And just that fact alone shows you that something airy was going on in those times. And yeah, it just what I want to pick up with that fact is, a lot of people think that, like, a witch hunt and werewolf hunt just sounds crazy. It was just people that were accused of, just normal people that were accused of false crimes, I guess. And I guess it's kind of tough to say it, but well, I guess not really. Just think how many generations have gone by since then. There's not one person alive now that was alive then. So there's a lot of information that was lost. So it'd be easy for somebody just to say that witches and things like that didn't exist back then, because I'm a firm believer that we live in a created systematic operation system now, that we're just all a part of 9 to 5, to where we don't really do any research, and we're not as deeply religious as we used to be as a whole. I really feel like people are disconnected as a whole, on a mass scheme of things, mentally, physically, spiritually, all in combination. And we're disconnected in that fact, and forgetting these loreful stories, especially during that's what I love about the Halloween seasons, because they kind of expel, these stories that have been forgotten. They bring them back to life, I guess, is what I'm getting at with the lost time. And, because not one person alive today was alive back in those witch trial and werewolf trial times. So there's been other instances where we know that history is different than what we were taught in school, I guess. And
Mhm.
what's to say that there really wasn't a lot of black magic going on, you know, and they were, a lot of people were accused falsely. I know that, you know, because people, it was shoot first and ask questions later sort of a deal.
Mhm.
Hey, let's go rip their arms out, and then we'll question them. So, you know, I get that too, but, you
Well,
know, kind of,
I've been a firm believer that there was actual witchcraft going on in those times too. And same thing with werewolves, cryptids, everything, all that was around. They have reports of it, but it was flooded by the bias of the time and the fears of the time. And so a lot of innocent people were accused, the ones that have been publicized, but there were a lot more that were not. So I always feel that there were some cryptids that actually got killed or hurt. Then there were people that were into the magic and witchcraft back then that actually you don't know about. That were actually either killed or got away and were able to actually survive those times. Also, people have past lives that were in those times. That's why they're connected to a lot of
mhm.
these this myth and lore because they were around. Their soul was around at the time that these things existed. So they are drawn to these particular subjects like werewolves or vampires or Sasquatch or any of the other cryptids like goblins or elves or any of those creatures.
Okay.
And the Fae, yeah. And we'll have to do different episodes on some of the different
All of them,
cryptids and
yeah.
all of them.
And
Yeah.
we'll be more specific with actual creatures as we go. This is just kind of a Halloween episode, so if you think we're all over the place, we just wanted werewolves to be the main topic, but we always divulge and we want you to have the most information possible so your mind can just go
And
and be like,
explode, yeah, and
whoa,
spread.
man, that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. I never thought information that way, bro.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's really cool. I was hoping to bring someone in to actually talk about this too, but I could do that. It wouldn't take that long. Let's see. Actually, you're going to like this one because one a being we talk to all the time by the name of Isaac. You would be very compatible with him because he tends to crack jokes and do all that sort of stuff. But he's known for his lewd comments and all this other stuff. But is that you, Isaac? I got to make sure. True benevolent Isaac. Okay, yes, it is you. Okay. All right. I always have to like triple, quadruple check stuff because if you let something in that is negative, I've learned that lesson the hard way. So and it takes a while to fix it too. So
oh yeah, that classic expression, do you learn from your mistakes? Well, I try to anyhow, but
yeah, and yeah, okay. You want to definitely come in and talk? Okay, I'll have to hold on to something here. Let's see, on to Crystal or something here. Let's see. Oh, on another thing, before I get to him, we had a dog man being that actually came through in this skull right here. I was kind of hoping he would show up, but he would talk. But he called himself Rotham, and he said he was up in the top part of the globe, the forest that circled the globe. And he said he was a descendant lineage of tribes from Atlantis that migrated up into Romania and up into that forest, and that's where some of the dogman myths with them came into being as well, and some of the werewolf ones. So Isaac, yeah, okay, good. Yeah, and you could probably ask him questions after. He'll say something. He'll more than likely say, "Okay, questions" or something like that. So let's see.
I
Hmm?
I was going to ask you as well. Uh,
Oh yeah, you can do that first. Go ahead. Yeah.
and speaking of the Dogman or Isaac, and speaking of the Dogman, what are some of the most vicious reports that you have heard of personally surrounding the Dogman lore in the United States in particular?
Well,
Just
there was
because.
one in particular that caught my eye, where there was a hunter that had a double-barrel shotgun that saw this big dog man come out of the woods, big werewolf type with a pointed face and everything,
Hmm.
typical, like almost like wolf German Shepherd like look, and he shot it in the chest, and they're said to have almost like a thick enough hide to where it's almost like a bulletproof vest. And the ones that are soldiers too also have incorporated this in their transformation as well. Some of them are genetically bred and were by the Anunnaki centuries ago as well. There's other tribes that were like that as well. But this, going back to this story, this guy shot this dog man, And this dogman not only knocked him to the ground with a big hand, that had the claws and everything on it, he picked this guy up, and it was reminiscent of like Loki getting beat up by the Hulk, and picked him up and just kind of like and slapped him around like the Hulk did Loki in the Avengers. And the guy survived with like I think a broken leg or something like that. And this dogman, if he wanted to rip him apart, he would have. He just considered the gun to be a nuisance, like noisemaker, versus an actual thing that could harm him. So they're known to be bulletproof as well. Yeah.
And see, that's kind of what I've heard, like in the conclusion of a lot of stories, comparing the final outcome, the conclusion of their dogman werewolf sightings, more dogman, I suppose. But I feel as if most of them, kind of get terrified, but like that's it. They never really get harmed. There's like a tiny few percentage that do viciously get attacked, by these creatures. And I do believe, the sky is the limit. Who knows why people, going back to the missing people, why people vanish in the middle of nowhere when they go out and hike, not just national parks. I'm sure it happens, elsewhere that you don't even hear about, out in the middle of nowhere. And just thinking that you could get snatched up by something, that's just terrifying. But I guess that's why we can't let fear control us.
Exactly. If fear can control you in this, you're not going to see it objectively. You're not going to actually see it for what it is. Eventually, society will convert over to being able to see things critically and basically feel with their heart, but also be able to think things through as well, and not be afraid of any of these cryptids or any of these like the dogman or any of the werewolf or dog species that are spacefaring. There are spacefaring ones too that actually are traders. They actually trade with people as well. But also, let's see. Oh, Isaac, you want to get going? Okay, let me see. Okay, let's see. Okay. I shall make this brief. Everyone, you know me as Isaac, not only the jokester, but the one with always the lewd comments. But in this particular instance, I will actually be as descriptive as I can. All of what you said has been true in this episode. There are indeed varieties of dogman that expand your entire globe. There are hundreds of thousands of them worldwide. And there also are far more, even than he knew, of the transformative werewolf types that are currently on in the world that can walk amongst you in city scenarios and in the country, very much like your vampires. And have the myths crossed both those lines? Yes, they have, because there have been experiments done by different ET groups that have attempted to cross both of those particular worlds. Are there some that can actually shift into a dog-like form and be vicious? Yes. Are some containing a viral contagion, very much like a venom, that could create others? Yes, this is indeed true. This actually has its origins back during the times of ancient Egypt, when the Dark Orions, are the ones you call the Archons, actually invaded and infected those with what is known as a vampire virus. But there is another group, you see, called the Antiqua, that actually wanted to have a continuance of their race here on the earth. They wanted to be able to adapt and to be able to guard different doorways and portals that may at some point have been hazardous to not only humans, but to their own kind. And also the fact that they did not want any of these Dark Orion or Harvester entities to actually come across the threshold from any other time frame in which these entities would come, because they had accomplished what others only actually, as you would say, dreamed of doing. They ripped across time and space and entered into a multitude of different temporal planes, existences, and lifetimes and eras, even entering our galaxy long before they ever entered, if that makes sense. So therefore, these doorways and cracks and fissures had to be guarded. The Antiqua wanted to actually continue their race here, but Earth has such a complex set of energies and magnetics certain DNAs did not mesh, and certain energetics did not mesh, and densities did not mesh with that of the earthly plane. In that, some went feral, other ones actually went more into hiding underground. The feral ones were actually some of the vicious werewolf stories that you have heard. Other ones gained more of a transmutative ability to where, as I've said, that they could walk amongst your kind. They could even breed with your kind, creating a hybrid that could actually transform, very much like your Wolfman stories in that particular respect. These different tribes actually also entered into Atlantis, to go back even further, roughly 20,000 of your years ago. They actually formed different, as you would say, pleasant tribes amongst the Atlantean groups, such as different elven groups, different giant Scandinavian Norse groups, and the like. When Atlantis fell, they scattered to the four winds, and as I've said, either created different descendant lineages, hid underground, and the like, or became feral on the surface. These different groups also fell into myth, such as your Wauki, Rugaru, and Skinwalker. The Rugaru specifically responded to pleas from those wishing to actually stop dark occurrences from happening, say summoning more demonic force to actually help out in times of need, let's just say. This actually goes back to your slavery period in the United States, where some of your freed slaves or slaves trying to become freed from their slave masters would ask for assistance from different magical sources in their religious views. It was some of the telepathic dogmen that actually decided to assist and lure some of these slave masters out into the murky swamp, never to be seen again. This actually has fueled some of the more negative stories surrounding some of these dog or werewolf type stories. Now to the more vicious and feral types. If you were to encounter some of these, they would bark at you like a dog, and they would attempt to actually get you out of their territory. However, they would act like a pack of wolves and either hurt you or attempt to get you out of their territory. Now, there are some that are also like your common day dog that are shorter and look more like a midget or dwarf. These particular ones are very much like your house dog and will actually act very much like your particular pet. They have been known to even walk up to people and sit next to them at times if they are out far enough into the wilderness. Some are not like that. Some are actually highly intelligent and telepathically based, and other ones are more like your house pet. Other ones are extremely vicious and would tear the roof off of your home if you allowed them to. It runs the gambit. The more vicious types have had encounters with hunters, had encounters with bear traps, and having had encounters with military. I am at the point where I can take questions.
Yes. What do you believe, or how many races do you believe spread from the Atlantis area that you spoke of?
That is also fairly difficult to say because there were races spurned from the different groups from Atlantis. But on Atlantis, starting with, there are only 3 to 4 different dogman groups that were there. When they escaped from Atlantis, they spread to what you call the four winds. They then adapted over a period of time to create dozens of different types of dogmen of all different heights, sizes, and shapes and temperaments. This is also depending on different areas of the planet in which they escaped to, or underground in Agartha or the Hollow Earth. This depended on how the magnetic fields, the weather, and atmospheric and magnetic conditions were at the time that caused their races to change over a period of time. There are some that still exist today that were there on Atlantis, different leaders of different tribes that have had different lineages spring forth from theirs. In that, they actually managed to create new races of people. These are actually people that have sometimes have dog and human DNA in them. Other times they're purely um, dog man up on all upright limbs, like some of the werewolf types you would expect. Those would be more like guards or enforcers or policemen in those groups because they have bigger muscles. And some would look exactly like a human, just with more hair on the face. These adaptations took place over as you would say, about 12 to 10 to 12,000 year period on your planet, and created a variant of different dogman, or you would say werewolf societies on your planet. But if I had to judge the amount of groups and subgroups and different variations of dogman on the planet currently, not counting the full entirety of the populations, but different groups and subgenuses, I would have to say there are at least 250 to 275 different variant groups on the planet of dogmen. Within those groups, there are hundreds of thousands of different variations within them, and also hybridized groups, just like you have people that enter into interracial marriages and the like, and different cultures and the like. Some of them have kept separate, and some of them can be still classified as their race, just exactly like you have on Earth with different races, but some have intermingled. It is not as common as you would think, but there are at least 250 to 275 distinct dogman groups on your world.
What out of all of the dogs that have been devoted as divine leaders, which one of those beings, divine beings, dog-headed beings, do you believe is the most powerful?
That is interesting to say because they all have a difference of capabilities. In the power of voice, for instance, there is a particular group of trading dogmen out there that have a persuasive voice, very much how you would judge a used car salesman could persuade you to buy a used car. They sell and trade old devices, and some people would call it junk out there. That is a form of persuasion. But as far as magical capabilities, that would have to actually be the Antiqua. You would call them the Anubis race. They are basically the father race of all dog species that exist within your solar system and within the Canis Major constellation. There are other dog races that evolved separate from them, but I would have to say the Antiqua would have to be the most powerful as far as magical capabilities go, incantations, and technological base.
Is there a planet somewhere out there that just consists of a dog race of beings, like a rabbit, just a classic world that just has a weird dog creature, whether it's dog man, a werewolf? Is there a world out there somewhere?
Indeed, there are actually several of them. The original Antiqua homeworld actually fell to the invading Orion forces, and it is mostly a wilderness world. You could call it more of a graveyard. Humans will eventually visit that. But are there planets out there that are just feral dogmen out there that are more of a tribally based type, or even caveman based type? Yes, there are actually several out there that if you went there, you would actually not be met with the kindest of receptions, because they are actually, some of them are more cannibalistic, but there are also technologically advanced planets out there of dog races. There is a dog type out there that looks more like a bulldog that actually has only them on their planet. They have not commingled with any of the other dog races. They have, as I've said, with the jowls of a bulldog, that they are highly technologically advanced. And you have other ones that are more mixes, that actually prefer to actually stay tribal like, but with a technological capability of leaving their world. They just choose not to do so. Now, are there others further in the galaxy that have mixes? And are there dog men that have commingled in other races and have cities and encampments like you have on Earth? Yes, indeed. But there are a few that are just those particular races. Yes.
Very interesting. To end this special Halloween episode, I must ask you these final two questions. What is the closest planet to Earth that contains a dog species of beings? And what do you believe is the most powerful, most ravenous, overall scariest creature to inhabit this planet that we call home and Earth?
To answer the first question, the closest planet is one that I have not informed him about. This actually, the closest planet with a dog race is actually not that far from your solar system. They are actually just over in your neighboring systems in the what you would call the Pleiades. They are actually a mild-mannered, mild-tempered race that actually is more of a flat-faced dog man type. That is actually the closest to you. That and the ones in Canis Major that also call themselves the Canis, that are the trading ones that I have currently talked about, that look very much either like a flat-faced dog or have more protruding snouts. There is also a third one that is actually close to you in what you call the Cassiopeian star system, or the big W in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
They are actually one of the closest, that actually they look more like German Shepherds, Huskies, and Mastiffs. They have more the dog-like appearance that you would expect with the variant of colors and sizes and shapes, very much like how you have variants of colors, sizes, and shapes. Now, the scariest being on your world, even outside of all the dogmen and all of them, the scariest being to inhabit your world, we would have to say is more reptilian based. You would say the Draco, but they have different variants and different sizes and shapes, just like you do, and just like the Dogman or the Forest People do. However, there is a larger type you would call the Alpha Draco. They are white, have wings, and they have an extremely powerful telepathic capability that can range and circle the globe if they allowed it to. Not to give them any more power than they need to have, but saying factually, they are one of the scariest because them and their lower Draco are responsible for a lot of your abductions on your planet, because they basically eat the ones they consume and steal their energy capabilities and their energy cores. They are also powered with artificial intelligence. And also, that artificial intelligence, I also must say, is the scariest of all, because it is a signal, a very dangerous signal, that has not only popped up on your world due to the time travel mishaps of your Dark Orions, or Archons as you call them, but it can actually convert any computer that it touches into more of a Terminator-like scenario. The Draco would end up backing this up as more of a foot soldier. So it is all combined. Also, your gray aliens, even though they are scrawny and have a butt crack on the back of their skull, this is actually, or one of the variations do. They are scary. They're quite scary, but as in bulk and fierceness wise, I would have to say the Draco take the belt for that one.
Very interesting. Well, thank you, Isaac, for that great information.
Thank you. And I will frequent these shows as much as possible. Happy Halloween, everyone, and don't be retarded. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. 'Tis the season for fun times.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. He's a very easy channel. And he's also where I got this idea for making these skulls from. He has an original one that I first encountered him with sitting out in the yard at the moment. He doesn't use it anymore. He just comes and goes now. But I figured he either him or an actual dog man would be present. But he says he's going to be on future ones. There's probably going to be much funnier things he'll pull off later on. He always tells people either not to be fucktarded or retarded. So it's like, that's how he ends his stuff. So a lot of times now.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, how about that, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I enjoyed doing this show tonight, folks. So thank you, everybody, for watching this maiden episode of the Conspiracy Sector. Have any final thoughts, Aubrey?
Yeah, actually, thank you everybody for tuning in. We will have a few more holiday episodes to come. We kind of wanted just to have some fun and explore some Halloween lore and do some delving deep into the mystic of different creatures, focusing on the werewolf, of course. That was the main topic of the night, but we wanted to expand our horizons into the ether of the unknown to grab all the information that we can. However, I want to thank you. Yet to come, we are going to have a special Thanksgiving episode and a Christmas episode, which we're going to brew up, and we're going to find we're maybe some historical information and some lore, and we'll combine it into a very cool melting pot full of information.
Yes, and
And
we were thinking Krampus as well. So that
yeah, we're gonna do a Saint Nick and Krampus deal. Not to give too much away, but that's just a little bit of a hint. You're gonna have a good holly jolly holiday season with us. But for now, you are leaving the conspiracy sector. Trick or treat, everybody.
trick or treat, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Between the world we see and the things we fear, there are doors. When they're opened, nightmares become reality. Happy Halloween, my friends.